Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Ryan Hawk. Ryan is a keynote speaker. He's a host of a podcast called The Learning Leaders Show, wildly popular podcast, millions of downloads in more than 150 countries. He's also the author of the book, Welcome to Management. Awesome topic. And he's got a brand new book that's coming out real soon. By the time you're listening to or watching this, it's probably already came out and you can grab a copy. It's called The Pursuit of Excellence. All right. So Ryan, welcome. Great to have you here.
Chandler, man, you've already been a huge help before we started recording. So I really appreciate, man. It's good to be with you.
Yeah. So I will start with why this book. Why did you decide to write your first, I guess not the most recent one, but why did you decide to write your first book? And how did you see that fitting in with your speaking, with your business, with your podcasts, all that good stuff?
I think it's similar to what you were just saying before we started recording. And that is, I thought of like one of the biggest pain points of my career, as well as a lot of questions I was asked and what people were hiring me for. And that is making that first leap in your career from individual contributor to first-time manager. And a lot of us have either worked for that person or we've been that person. And so I know when that was me, it was a mess. I mean, a mistake after mistake after mistake. So my hope was I wanted to write the book that if you, Chandler, if you worked in corporate America and let's say you got promoted and the person says, "Congratulations, Chandler, you got the job." They shake your hand, give you a little hug, and then they hand you a book. And I want you to be handed Welcome to Management to say, this could be your guide. This could be your playbook because you've never done this before. And the guy who wrote it learned from a lot of the mistakes that he made, as well as from all of the authors that he interviews on his podcast or all of the managers and leaders he interviews on his podcast, The Learning Leaders Show. Hopefully it'll help you not make the same mistakes he did. So really, like a lot of authors, you try to write the book that you wish you had for that moment in your life. And that's what I tried to do. And fortunately, people seem to find it useful.
Yeah. Well, I love how specific the topic is, how clear the title is. We always talk about somebody should instantly understand what your book's about within 2 seconds.
Yep.
It could not be more clear with your topic and with your title. So I think you nailed it with that. It sounds like this is the book that you wish that someone gave to you. And was this also kind of like something that you were just getting asked questions about a lot? It seemed like.
Yeah, both. I would say both. And and kind of the market starts to tell you what they want from you, especially if you built some sort of a platform. And my podcast became that platform for me because that came before everything. That gave me the opportunity. That created the reason that a publisher would want me to would pay me in advance to write a book. So that's why I just went really deep and tons of interviews, both on the podcast and off, to help write the book. Like I said, that I wish that I had prior to that leap, because I made countless mistakes that my team had to suffer for. Now we got better and I improved, but it took a lot of hard lessons that I don't think you shouldn't have to make those yourself. Hopefully you can learn those from a book or from other people. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I love that. So, did the publisher, I think it's McGraw-Hill, did they reach out to you because of the podcast and you got a book deal that way, or do you get an agent and kind of go that whole route? How'd you get kind of that deal on your first book?
I actually hired a writing coach. She specialized in writing proposals. Cool. Who got referred to me by a friend of mine named Joey Coleman. And Joey, I met at an event called Mastermind Talks with Jason Gaynard. And so he was on the podcast. Then we talked about book writing and his process and how he went through it. And then he introduced me to someone who helped him. She helped me. And I then got introduced to Joey's book agent, who's Jim Levine. Yep. And then we asked Jim what he thought. Jim had asked to represent me, and he told me he thought we would get some bids if we took it to the traditional publishers. We did. And I was elated. I was a little bit surprised initially. I know more about it now, so I get it. I've recorded with Jim. We've talked a lot. I've become very close with Casey Ebro at McGraw-Hill. She's done both of my books, and so it was pretty cool process how it came together. It was painful at times, but I think I've learned a lot through the process of outlining, of the proposal, of setting yourself up to be able to write a useful book. There's a lot that goes into it. And then the whole marketing and selling part is just a completely different aspect as well that I've learned about. So it started from the podcast. It started from helpful introductions from friends. And then from there, people showed some interest, made some bids, and then we took the deals with McGraw-Hill for both books.
That's awesome. I think I'm remembering now. We were trying to figure out before we started this interview how we originally met, and I think it might have actually been Mastermind Talks years ago. I volunteered at the second ever Mastermind Talks, working with Jason, and I bet you that's where, because like our worlds have been circling. And
which one?
Gosh, the 2015.
I went to Ojai, but I've been kind of in Jason's orbit for a while.
Maybe not. Ojai. The mystery continues.
I don't know.
So let's talk that launching and selling that first book. What sold the most copies and how'd you launch it?
So the fact that I had a built up platform for my podcast is very helpful. I started, sharing it on my podcast. I've been building an email. But one of the mistakes I made that I think a lot of people say is I did not start building an email list immediately, and I should have. I was given that advice, and I was like, it's still too early. It's still too early, and it's never too early. So I started building that now. It's been 294 weeks, so do the math. But I still should have started even earlier because I've sent one every week, so that's how I know the number. But the combination of my email list as well as my podcast, and then I was getting booked quite a bit to speak, and like a lot of other authors, I would then do bulk buys with people who would book me to speak. So in addition to whatever they were paying me, we would put books as a part of the deals. So, and that's what I'm doing here for the second one too, is those are really the three core parts. And then you hope that there's still the book's good enough that after it launches, that the individual word of mouth, hey, you should buy this book, you should read this, is part of that too. So it's a combination of bulk buys, my email list, and then the platform from my podcast. And obviously I try to get the word out there by going on podcasts like yours to help spread the message too. And so a combination of all those things, I think, helped propel it to where now it's more of an evergreen topic too. It should be a backlisted book, as Jim has told me, my agent, that it's a topic that will forever be something that somebody needs. So while we wanted to launch big and the launch was good, I'm almost more proud when I see these big pops of a week on Amazon where we sell hundreds of books and it's been out now for more than 2 years. So I think that's kind of the cool part about book writing is you do it once, but then you sell it thousands and thousands of times.
Heck yeah. Leveraged impact, as we call it, the ability to do work once and create this book. And then that book goes on to impact thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, maybe even millions. You mentioned top 3 things to sell books. You got the podcast, obviously really successful, ton of downloads, good listenership, that sort of thing. You've got your email list. And the third thing was bulk buys. We've talked about the other 2 a decent amount on the show. I'd love to hear bulk buys. So this is a strategy I talk about. I think it's it's chapter 18 or 19 in my new book published. I talk about bulk buys. I'm curious your strategy. So is it bulk buys in addition to speaking gigs? Is it with companies? Like, what's the structure? How do you make it a win for them? And then how do you sell those bulk buys?
I want it to be a part of every deal. So if they ask me to speak, it's a part of every, if they say, hey, what's your rate? It's this amount plus then this many books and then the total. And then if I'm going to go work with a company, same thing, however many people I want the book in all of their hands. So yeah, it is. I'm thinking if every speaking engagement I have now, I'm focusing on the new book. It depends on the audience though. Like if they're just focused on purely management, then we'll go with the first book. But if it's more of like let's say a national sales meeting or a sales kickoff, the SKO as they're called, those where there's a lot of individual contributors, a lot of people who are kind of like on this excellence path, they'll go with this next book. Where I'm like, let's get the book in everybody's hands. I will sign them, take pictures, do whatever you guys want. So it makes the bulk buy conversation much easier. So far, it is not a hard sell. If they're committed to want to bring you in, usually then adding on a few hundred or depending on the audience, maybe even 1,000 or so books can get moved in that manner. It's awesome. It's pretty nice when you can do that. And I think that's part of the attraction, or what I've been told from McGraw-Hill, is they know that I can do that. Because as a lot of my writing friends have told me, they don't pay you to write the book, they pay you to sell the book. And so I realized that. And I grew up in sales. I worked in corporate America in a sales role for 12 years. So I understand selling. And if you believe in the ideas and you believe in the work, then why wouldn't you stand on top of the mountain or the table or wherever and try to sell that thing to everybody? And that's what I believe in. I wouldn't publish it if I didn't believe in it. So I have no problem asking for people to buy that and to try to get it into the hands of every person who's going to be in the audience, and offer to sign and take pictures, do whatever they want. Because then it also gives it a chance to spread. Like, is it going to hit with everybody? Of course not. But like, you could build your kind of your true fans through just a handful of those people. If there are hundreds, that's pretty powerful opportunity that I don't want to waste.
Yeah. Well, Zig Ziglar said, he's like, I can impact someone in 45 minutes, but I can't change their life. But if they buy my books, if they buy my cassettes, like all those things. And so you're creating raving fans, and really they have that book. And now every time they see that book, they think of you. You're enabling them to refer you to book more speaking gigs. I mean, it's a win-win-win all around. What are you doing? Just straight up list price? Is it bulk discounts? Like, how's that work?
Usually there's a bulk discount. I've worked with a couple of different places, but one of them is bulkbooks.com. Again, my friend Joey Coleman works with one of their leaders there. And so we have the same contact who helps make sure those orders are smooth and get shipped to the right place at the right time to make sure we can do all the signings and stuff. So it's a bulk discount, which is helpful for people to, when they're going to buy hundreds or more of them, to make sure that the price is okay.
Cool. So the speaking gigs fuel the books fuel the speaking gig, kind of this circle of life. Have you seen, since publishing the books, has that impacted both speaking requests, and have you been able to raise your fee because of that? What's that look like?
Definitely. Yes. It's made it much better. And I will say, from a podcast perspective, there are still quite a few people who don't listen to podcasts, just any of them. But everybody knows books. They may not read the books, but they know they exist. They may even buy it and still not read it, but there's still numbers. So what it's done for me is created a whole nother place to be discovered by people who don't listen to podcasts. I don't know the latest stats, but for a while it was only about half the country, and talking about the States now. And now, though, everyone's aware. They can go to Amazon and see the book is there. They can buy it. Again, they don't necessarily all read it, but they know it exists. They see your name. There is something that goes along with that then helps. I've also been told, this is before I had a book published, and this is probably perfect for you, where somebody had seen like a highlight thing of me speaking, but I had not published a book at that point. And they said, sorry, we only book people who have written books for this conference or this event. And one, I thought that was a mistake, but it was another reminder. They should probably go to self-publishing school or do something. They should write a book. If that is a part of the criteria, it does increase your level of credibility when it comes to people who choose to book speakers. And so while I may not agree with that, I understand why. That's part of the deal. And so I do that now. So I can check off that box. I also just think the other reason to write a book is because writing, the act of doing it, creates so much clarity of thought that all leaders, and I work in the leadership space, all leaders should be writers, and even better if you choose to publish that work, and even better than that if you choose to publish a book. And now there are so many more possibilities to publish a book in a professional way, right, than there used to be, where there used to be all these gatekeepers and it was really hard. It's not anymore. You can choose to do it yourself if you're willing to invest, some money and certainly the time. I push leaders to do that regularly now.
Yeah, that's great. And even just, I noticed kind of how this feeds together is, I was on your Amazon page earlier today and checking out your books, and then boom, there's the 2-minute clip right there of you speaking. And so that's just, if I'm, as just a regular person like landing on that page or an event coordinator, I'm seeing that and I'm saying, oh, this book looks interesting. Oh, it's got a couple hundred reviews on Amazon. That's legit. Hold up, there's a video right here. Oh, this guy does speaking. Maybe I should book him for our next event, right? And so it
Yes.
just kind of feeds into the whole thing.
Speaking of, it does. That's super helpful. It's credibility. This latest book published, I think I saw, how did you get so many reviews on Amazon so fast?
Yeah. So, so there's a couple things. It's funny. And so check it out. Chapter, oh man, for your next book, this might be helpful for you. The one that you're launching right now, chapter 20. It's called, it's the road to your first or your next 100 reviews. But there's a few things. So, launch team works really, really well. So having a group of people who support you or the topic of the book.
I have that. Okay.
One small thing that not a lot of people do is I call it the review sweeper. So it's really just a 3 email sequence that follows up with people starting 21 days after they grab a copy of your book. So that works really, really well. The templates are actually in that chapter 20. And so it just says, hey, are you liking the book? I'd love to hear, like, hit reply. And then when they reply, I've got like a customer support macro that just says, hey, thanks so much. Would you mind copying and pasting that into a review here? And then just a bunch of small little things like that, asking for reviews. Every time someone says, hey, I loved your book, like, hey, could you copy and paste that in a review right here? Just like the little small things that
make it easy for them to do it, right? Make it easy for them to write the review. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, obviously you have this, wildly successful podcast. How have you used the podcast to help sell books? What's worked there? Anything that's innovative or that you've tried that you've seen that's worked well? And then secondarily, do you promote, or do you see more copies of the audiobooks sold because of the podcast, and naturally people who listen to podcasts probably listen to audiobooks, that sort of thing, or no?
Yeah, so the Audible thing was one issue. So we were it was going really well on Audible, high reviews. It was ranked in one of the top 25 like audio management books of all time by Book Authority, all these great, cool things. And then McGraw-Hill lost their deal, or they didn't come to a renewal agreement with Audible, and it crushed me. It was devastating, honestly. Yeah. And so all of that came off of Audible for a full year. And part of the deal with my second book was, like, I wasn't going to do it unless they got my first book, Welcome to Management, back on Audible. It wasn't just my book. It was all of their titles. So they said, we're actively in negotiations. They eventually did get the deal done. It got placed back on Audible, but all those reviews are gone. Everything is wiped away. That ranking went away from that because it wasn't there for a year. It's back now. I do the readings myself. Yes, Audible's big, definitely big for me. I would say because my platform was built from an audio platform because of the podcast first and foremost. So it is big. I like reading the books myself. I think people seem to like that. It reviewed really well. But other ways to I think I use it. I mean, especially around launch time and around the book, I mention it on every single podcast. I also have a text to opt in for my email list because people listen to podcasts on their phone. So it's much easier to text to opt in. So you text to opt in, you're going to see the book at the beginning of the welcome email too. So you get opportunities there to see the book. So I think all that's helped, and the audience just steadily grows. So there's more new people. So that's why I say it every single episode, so that new people can go there and opt in and gives them a chance to buy the book. So that's part of it too. My one thing is, I think we have a few hundred reviews, but we should have a lot more. And that's where I'm probably next. I could use some help from you of how to do that better.
Yeah. And do you have any short links or anything that you do on the podcast that make it easy for people to download the audiobook, or anything in specifically?
I haven't really done that. I've just the text to opt in, and then from there, the intro email, but I probably could get better at that. I probably need to do something there.
Just 2 little quick thoughts there that might be helpful. One is, so I have a short link for publishedbook.com/audible. and it's just an easy, so people can, and so that's our call to action where people can go there and say, oh, get the audiobook for free.
And you get a lot of hits on that. That converts well.
Decent amount. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the book just launched about a month ago, so we're still in the early phases there. But so then that goes directly to Audible, so they can get the copy of the book for free for if they do a trial, or just with a credit if they already have Audible. So either way, they can get a free copy of the book. And then one other thing that might be helpful for you on the review side of things is just a short link for reviews. So we go publishedbook.com/review. So learningleader.com/review or whatever the book website is. And so it's just easy for you to remember. So you can type it out real quick if someone says something good about the book, but then also easy for people to remember.
Shoot them straight to Amazon, right?
Exactly. And it'll go straight to the review page and just a redirect. And so it makes it real simple. And then obviously there's little things too, like call to action in the book, like at the end of the book. And we talk about like structuring that in the book to ask for reviews at the end and all that stuff. It's in the PS at the end of published, and
super helpful.
Kind of asking for it specifically in the text itself. Hey, we got a couple more minutes left. Okay. I want to talk about your next book, or well, actually one question related to your next book, but in your first book too. So I noticed that you have prominent forwards in both books. So you've got Patrick Lencioni as the forward on the next book. I think you had an Army general as a forward in
General McChrystal.
Yeah. In the first book. What's the thought process behind prominent forwards for your books? And then how do you get them?
Thought process is, I mean, honestly, I thought it would be pretty cool to be partnered with people that are literally like heroes of mine. And I didn't think either of them were possible, but I have built good relationships with General McChrystal. I went to Gettysburg with him. He teaches a class at Yale, a leadership class. He invited me to go. I went. I swung for the fences after that weekend we spent together at Gettysburg, and asked him, and he said yes. And I thought, how cool to have his name next to mine, have it on the book. And then he wrote it. And it was just even the process of like sending drafts back and forth was amazing. And then I thought, well, that kind of gave me some confidence for the next one. And Pat Lencioni and I have had a number of talks about him when he launched his podcast. I tried to be a useful resource for him. And we've thrown some things back and forth, and I didn't even know it, but he was kind of advocating on my behalf with my agent, Jim Levine, and telling him, hey, you should represent this guy, which he never told me he did that, but super kind of him. And that's, I think, ultimately what told Jim that to take me on as a client. And then so I asked Pat to do it, and he did. He did. So I think, you know, in a way, it's a combination of like, this is really cool. Like, if something is that simple, as well as I don't think it hurts to have your name next to, you know, 4-star general, or to Pat Lencioni, who has lived on the bestseller list for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And so, that's why that's why we do it, and or why I do it. And I'm just grateful that they said yes.
Yeah, that's huge.
Gone 2 for 2 because they were the number 1 draft pick for both books. So I felt kind of like, oh, this is cool. They said yes. So I'm just grateful for them for doing it, because it's a lot of work. I mean, they don't. Yeah. It's published work. They have standards to uphold. They're not just going to put out garbage. So I'm super grateful for them.
That's awesome. And so speaking of, you got Patrick Lencioni, who's author of some of my favorite books of all time. Just great author. He's writing the foreword for your brand new book, upcoming book, called The Pursuit of Excellence. So a couple questions on that book, and then we'll touch on where people can go to grab a copy. So how are you doing things different with this book, the upcoming book, based on what you learned from watching the first book?
A lot of the same things, but just the audience, fortunately, is much bigger. The launch team is bigger. The pre-readers, there are more. The review people are ready. The ones who have already read it are there. I got a lot more help along the way, so I think the book overall is going to be better. I invested more in people to make it a more useful book, because the topic is more broad. It's not as pointed as Welcome to Management. It's more on kind of the leading yourself part of leadership, which is
Yeah.
sometimes overlooked, I
Yeah.
think, but it's the most important part, in my opinion, is to lead yourself. So I think that part's there. And then I, I'm just gonna, I have more speaking engagements. There's more bulk buys for this one. There's more one-offs. I think we hit early on Amazon even better because I was more targeted on the days where we wanted to really juice that algorithm. So I sent people all at the same times. I've done that a few times to kind of have it skyrocket a little bit at the beginning. It hasn't, at the time of this recording, it hasn't launched yet. I don't know when it comes out. It will be out. But so a combination of all those things, a lot of moving parts. I have a video guy who's building. I did a bunch of audio reads, so we were doing a lot of social media that I didn't do for the first one, where like excerpts from the audio book, turning them into like pretty cool artwork that we'll send out there. And then I've really looked at some of the other great authors of their email sequencing and have copied them flat out, like James Clear. I have his email from the day Atomic Habits came out, which is amazing to look back on now, because he had no idea it would become the #1 book on Amazon in 2021 at that time. And now, 3 years later it is. So I just flat out, look at the things that work for other people and try to copy them. And hopefully, like, the confluence of all of those events together then lead to the book not only launching well, but then living on forever, and it becoming a backlist book for people, so that it's not just a, hey, let's launch big and then die, but let's launch big and then keep going. And that's what I hope happens.
That's great, man. That's awesome. And guys, if you want to hear how James Clear launched his book, check out the episode on the Self-Publishing School podcast. He talks about how he sold 4 million copies, I think it is, of his book in 3 years.
It's crazy, dude.
It is absolutely bonkers.
So awesome.
So check out that episode. It's a good one. But last question or two I have for you, Ryan. I was noticing, looking today, you published your first book on January 28th, 2020. Your second book coming out January 25th, 2022. So almost 2 years to the day. Mm-hmm. Was that on purpose? Is that just kind of how it works? Like, is there any intentionality behind that?
So, like, Ryan Holiday told me he always has his next book sold before the other one comes out. I'm not quite that fast, but I remember when he told me that, it just changed my perspective on idea creation and getting the next proposal done. So I had some, like, the startings of a proposal when my last book came out, but not really. I mean, I just had like notes. And so I thought there's a chance I could get the proposal put together and then get it sold. The one downside of traditional publishing that I'm not as fond of is it just takes a lot longer. The process gets drawn out some, where this book, it probably could have came out 6 months ago. I mean, I guess it wasn't fully ready, but we could have probably sped up some parts of the process. But that's part of traditional publishing, at least in my experience, is that it does get delayed a little bit to when it comes out. But I do like January. It's the beginning of the year. It seems to be the right time for something like this. So I kind of like it. I like this rhythm. I don't know if I'll be able to keep it up or not yet. I'd like to, but I guess we'll see. I think the thing that I might try next, I probably shouldn't even say this out loud, I just think I might write a shorter book. I might just say, like, challenge myself to write a book in half as many words, but try to have the same impact. That's kind of like a challenge I've been thinking about, and maybe that will make it more doable. Or maybe I'm just saying that now because getting to 65,000 words was such a pain. But we still cut 20,000 words of this next book. So it was at 85,000 words, and we cut out 20 in order to get it down to this. So it was only supposed to be 60, and we ended up publishing, I think, around 65, I believe. So I don't know, man. Maybe that's what I'll do next.
That's so funny. With published my most recent book, it was the same exact. It was like 83, 84, and then got down to like 63 about the time at publishing. So it's a funny mirroring.
What do you think about paperback versus hardback? Does it even matter anymore?
I don't. I think hardback has some more prestige and feels like more of a legit book, but beyond that, I mean, for speaking gigs, because you can charge more, and they're going to pay, and it's legit. But then if you're trying to do other stuff with it that you want to be more cost effective, like we ship a bunch of books, or like when
Uh-huh.
I come to speak, we'll bring free books and use those to lead collect.
Gotcha.
And then so then we'll get the leads from pretty much the whole audience, and then turn that into
You mean they have to give you their email address to get your book?
Yep, exactly. And that's
Okay.
it though. It's a free book. And so
Yeah.
we'll capture people's name, email, phone number, and I think maybe address on a card, and they'll give us a card, and then they'll get a book. And then a lot of those folks will actually end up sitting down with our team at Self-Publishing School and saying, hey, let me walk through my book. And then a decent amount of those folks will say, hey, I'd love to work with you guys at Self-Publishing School. And so that's kind of just the flow. So for us, it's a $5 lead instead of whatever we would pay for any other leads through other marketing channels. And it's a qualified lead because they have a book that teaches a methodology and goes real in depth.
Well, I just love the strategy behind what you're doing. I think that's why I just kept peppering you with questions before we even started, because it's obvious that you have figured some things out and have built a really purposeful strategy to build your business, and books are part of it. And you've also proven and shown how others can do it, which,
Yeah,
dude, I'm huge props. Huge.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
impressed.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ryan. Well, hey, we'll wrap with this. Where can people go to find out more about you, to grab a copy of the book? So I would say pre-order, but it would be pre-order at the time of recording. By the time this releases, it's just go buy a copy of the book. So where can they go to find out more about you, grab a copy of the book, and anything else that you're up to?
Yeah. So the home base for everything is my website, learningleader.com. I have a text to opt in, which I mentioned. It's Hawk, HAWK, my last name, to 66866. You can text to opt in. Everything's free there. I mean, there's books off of that too, but that's the text to opt in. So I would encourage people that. And then the latest book is called The Pursuit of Excellence, man. I'm pumped about it. Excited. I hope people find it useful.
Yeah. Well, guys, grab a copy of the new book, The Pursuit of Excellence. Or if you're new to management, grab a copy of his first book, Welcome to Management. Ryan, you're the man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chandler. Good to be with you, man.